In the quiet outskirts of Yorkshire, down a narrow road shrouded by trees, sits an old Victorian home known to locals as the Ravenscroft House. The building has stood empty for decades, its windows covered in grime, its walls slowly surrendering to ivy and time. Yet those who dare to walk past it at night often swear they hear whispers, faint, echoing voices calling from the upper floors. In 1983, the Walker family moved into the house after purchasing it at an auction. The price was suspiciously low, but they saw it as a fresh start, a new life away from the city's noise. The house, though eerie, had charm, grand staircases, carved doors, and a sprawling garden. But soon the peace was broken. Strange noises echoed through the halls, footsteps when no one was there, doors slamming, and the faint sound of a woman humming lullabies in the attic. The youngest daughter, Emily, began speaking to someone her parents couldn't see. At first they thought it was imagination, but when objects started moving, mirrors cracked without cause, and the family awoke to scratches on their bedroom doors, it became clear something else lived there. The locals warned them, no one stays long at Ravenscroft. The last owner had vanished without a trace, leaving everything behind. What began as curiosity soon turned to terror, and the Walker's story would become one of the most disturbing hauntings in modern British history. The Walkers arrived at Ravenscroft House on a cold October afternoon. The moving truck rumbled down the uneven gravel road, scattering crows that had been perched along the gate. The air felt heavy, too still for the countryside. Even the trees seemed to lean inward, watching. Inside, the house smelled of damp wood and age. Dust hung thick in the air, dancing in the thin rays of sunlight that slipped through cracked curtains. "It just needs some life again," said Mr. Walker, forcing optimism. His wife, Margaret, nodded, though her eyes stayed fixed on the grand staircase, its steps darkened with years of neglect. By evening, they had unpacked the essentials. The children, Emily and Daniel, ran through the rooms, their laughter echoing eerily. When dinner ended, the family sat by the old fireplace in the parlor. That's when they heard it, a faint creak from upstairs, then another. "Probably the house settling," Margaret said quickly, though she clutched her teacup tighter. But later, when everyone had gone to bed, Emily's soft voice echoed through the thin walls. "Mommy, she's in my room," she whispered from the doorway. Margaret's heart dropped. "Who, darling?" "The lady in the black dress. She's crying." Margaret froze. The room behind her was empty, but the smell of perfume, old, floral, heavy, drifted through the air. The next morning, Emily didn't remember saying anything. Mr. Walker dismissed it all, blaming exhaustion. But when he opened the curtains in the study, he found something etched into the glass. She never left. The next night, the wind howled through the cracks of Ravenscroft House, rattling the old window frames. Daniel couldn't sleep. The branches outside scraped against the glass, and somewhere down the hallway, a faint dripping sound echoed steadily. Tap, tap, tap. He pulled his blanket tighter and whispered, "Dad." But the house answered with silence. When he finally dared to peek into the hallway, the air felt colder, unnaturally cold. The dripping grew louder, though no faucets were on. Daniel crept toward the noise, the wooden floor groaning beneath his small feet. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rust or blood. At the far end of the hallway, the light bulb flickered, casting long, shifting shadows. Then he heard it, a low, sobbing sound. He froze. From the guest room door, slightly ajar, a woman's voice whispered, trembling and broken, "Why did you leave me here?" Daniel's scream brought the family running. His father burst in, flipping on the light, but the room was empty. No sign of a woman, no dripping sound, no open window. Only a large damp spot spreading across the floorboards, seeping from nowhere. Margaret noticed something else, a faint imprint of a hand on the wallpaper, dark and wet, like someone had pressed against it from the inside. Mr. Walker rubbed his forehead. "This house, it's old. Things happen," but his voice lacked conviction. That night, none of them slept well. Even with the doors locked, Margaret swore she heard footsteps pacing outside her bedroom. Slow, deliberate, and just beyond the door. When morning came, Emily said quietly, "The crying lady says it hurts to be forgotten." The morning light brought no comfort. Margaret busied herself with breakfast. trying to forget the events of the night before. Daniel refused to go upstairs alone, and Emily kept staring at the wall as if listening to someone whisper from within it. After lunch, while cleaning the master bedroom, Margaret noticed something odd about the old dresser mirror. Its glass seemed cloudy, rippling faintly as though it were breathing. She leaned closer, wiping it with a cloth, and froze. For a split second, her reflection wasn't hers. The face staring back was pale, hollow-eyed, with long black hair dripping as if wet. The woman's mouth moved silently, forming words that Margaret couldn't hear. Margaret stumbled back, the cloth dropping from her hand. When she looked again, her reflection was normal, just her frightened face staring back. She tried to convince herself it was a trick of light, but as she turned away, she saw movement in the glass, the reflection of someone standing directly behind her. Slowly, she turned around. No one was there. That night, Margaret dreamt she was trapped inside the mirror, pounding against the glass while her reflection smiled coldly back at her. When she awoke, sweat drenched her pillow, and the mirror across the room shimmered faintly in the moonlight. The next morning, Daniel pointed to the mirror and asked innocently, "Mom, who's the lady that watches us at night?" Margaret's blood turned to ice. Whatever haunted Ravenscroft House wasn't bound to the night anymore. It was watching them, even in daylight. The nights at Ravenscroft House had become unbearable. Every corner of the house seemed alive, whispering, sighing, and groaning, as if it had lungs and a heartbeat of its own. Margaret tried to keep calm for the sake of her children, but the fear was spreading like rot through every floorboard. It began one evening when Daniel complained about hearing people talking through the walls. Margaret dismissed it as imagination, but when she pressed her ear against the plaster, her blood froze. There were voices, faint, overlapping, whispering in tones too low to understand. They sounded close, too close. That night, she and Emily slept in the same room, hoping to find comfort in each other's presence. But at 2:47 a.m., a deep guttural laugh rolled through the walls, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps pacing between the bedrooms. The sound wasn't from the hallway. It was inside the walls. Margaret grabbed her daughter and ran into the corridor. The air smelled of damp and decay, as if the walls themselves were exhaling. Then came the whisper again, a harsh, rasping voice calling her name. Margaret. Her knees nearly buckled. She turned toward the staircase, and there, at the end of the hall, stood a shadow darker than the night itself. Tall, distorted, with no visible face. The moment she blinked, it vanished, leaving behind only a faint echo that lingered in her ears. When morning came, they found small cracks running along the walls, as though something inside was pressing to get out. Whatever haunted Ravenscroft House wasn't just seen, it was heard, and it wanted to be let in. The next morning, Margaret called a local handyman to inspect the strange cracks spreading through the walls. When he tapped near Daniel's bedroom, the sound was hollow, as if a space existed behind it. Curious, he began to chip away at the plaster. The moment the hammer struck a third time, an icy draft burst through the hole, carrying a stench of rot and mildew. Behind the wall was a hidden door, sealed shut with rusted nails. No one in the town records or property plans had ever mentioned an extra room. Margaret hesitated, but curiosity and dread pushed her to pry it open. The door groaned as it gave way, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. They descended with flashlights, each step creaking underfoot. At the bottom lay a small stone chamber, untouched by time. On the walls were strange symbols carved deep into the brick, and in the center of the room stood a wooden chair, old, splintered, and stained dark as if soaked in something long ago. Emily shivered. "Mom, this doesn't feel right." Before Margaret could respond, a cold whisper slithered through the air, the same voice from the walls. It echoed faintly around them, repeating a single word, "Stay." The flashlight flickered violently, and in that brief darkness, Margaret saw a figure sitting in the chair, motionless, head tilted to one side, its face hidden in shadow. When the light steadied again, the chair was empty. They fled upstairs, sealing the door behind them. But the whispers didn't stop. That night, the voices were louder, angrier, and one new sound joined them. something knocking from inside the walls, trying to get out. That night, none of them could sleep. The air in the house had turned heavy, charged with a presence that seemed to breathe alongside them. Every light flickered no matter how many bulbs they replaced, and a faint humming sound vibrated through the floorboards like a pulse beneath the house. Margaret sat in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea, when she noticed a child's drawing lying on the table, one she hadn't seen before. It showed their family standing in front of the house, but beside them was a tall black figure with hollow eyes. At the bottom, written in shaky letters, were the words, "He lives here too." She ran upstairs to check on Daniel and Emily. Both were asleep, but Daniel's blankets had been pulled tight around his body, as if by invisible hands. His lips were moving, whispering the same word over and over, "Stay." Margaret backed away slowly, heart hammering. Suddenly, the bedroom door slammed shut behind her with a force that rattled the windows. The lights went out. In the darkness, she heard footsteps circling her, slow, deliberate, dragging. She fumbled for her phone flashlight, and when she turned it on, the beam caught a reflection in the mirror, a dark silhouette standing directly behind her. She screamed, spinning around, but there was nothing there. Only the faint smell of damp earth and the soft sound of breathing that wasn't hers. When she opened Daniel's drawing again, the figure had moved closer, now standing between the two children, one shadowy hand resting on Daniel's shoulder. Margaret realized then that the presence wasn't just haunting the house. It had chosen her family. The next morning, Margaret refused to let the children go to school. Something inside her screamed that they were not safe outside or inside. Every sound now seemed alive. The creaking wood, the rustling curtains, even the hum of the refrigerator. But the most disturbing of all were the whispers. They began faintly, like a radio playing through static, unintelligible murmurs from behind the plaster. When she pressed her ear to the wall, she could make out fragments of words. "Leave before he wakes, and he watches when you sleep." By evening, the whispers grew clearer and louder. Daniel and Emily sat frozen in the living room as the voices echoed from the ceiling, the walls, the floorboards. Emily pointed upward, trembling. "Mom, they're inside the walls." Margaret grabbed a kitchen knife, driven by fear and desperation, and started prying open a loose section of wallpaper. Behind it, instead of wood, she found something horrifying, an old, bricked-up cavity filled with scraps of cloth and yellowed photographs. The pictures showed previous families who had lived in the house, all smiling, all standing in the same hallway. But someone else was in each photo, the same shadowy figure in black, lingering just behind them. Suddenly, a gust of wind burst through the hallway, slamming doors, knocking over frames. The whispers turned into anguished screams, filling the air like a storm of trapped souls. Daniel covered his ears and cried out, "Make them stop!" Then everything went still. The lights flickered back on, and in the exposed section of the wall, new writing appeared in fresh red letters, as though drawn by an unseen hand. "You should have listened." Margaret couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those smiling families and the dark figure behind them. She sat in the hallway, staring at the exposed wall, the message still faintly glimmering in the dark. "You should have listened." By morning, she made a decision. If there was something behind that wall, she needed to find it. Daniel protested, terrified. But Margaret's fear had turned to grim determination. She grabbed a hammer and began breaking through the bricks, each strike echoing like a heartbeat through the empty halls. The wall finally gave way, revealing a narrow, dust-filled passage. A rush of cold air spilled out, air that smelled of earth, mold, and decay. They followed the passage with flashlights, descending deeper until they discovered a small, hidden room buried beneath the house. Inside, the floor was covered with old ritual markings drawn in black soot. Surrounding a crude wooden chair bound by thick ropes, rusted chains hung from the ceiling and a single cracked mirror leaned against the far wall. Emily clutched Margaret's hand. "Mom, someone lived down here." Margaret's light trembled as she noticed something carved into the wall behind the chair. Hundreds of tally marks, each line cut deep into the stone. Beneath them, a name, Father Black. Suddenly the mirror flashed, reflecting not their faces but the figure in black from the photographs, standing behind them. The flashlight flickered violently, and a low voice filled the chamber. "You found what should remain buried." Panic erupted. The room seemed to close in as shadows danced across the walls. Margaret grabbed the children and fled back toward the stairs, but as they reached the top, the entrance slammed shut behind them. Trapped behind the sealed doorway, Margaret pounded against the bricks until her hands bled. The children cried behind her, and the air grew heavier, like the basement itself was breathing. From the darkness came the faint sound of chains rattling. Then a deep guttural voice whispered from nowhere and everywhere. He never left. The mirror flickered again, and this time, Margaret saw him clearly. A tall man cloaked in black robes, his face pale and stretched, his eyes hollow voids that swallowed light. Father Black, the priest who had once lived here decades ago, long before the house was sold. He had been accused of performing forbidden rituals in secret, claiming to cleanse lost souls. But when the church discovered his acts, he vanished, leaving behind only rumors that his spirit was bound to the house. As Margaret stared into the mirror, Father Black began to move closer. His reflection stepped forward, even though his real body was nowhere to be seen. He whispered prayers in a language she couldn't understand, each word making the room colder. The candlelight turned blue, flickering wildly. Emily screamed as one of the chains snapped from the ceiling, wrapping itself around the chair in the center of the room. The rope bindings began to tighten, as though preparing for someone unseen to sit. "Mom, he wants you to take his place," Daniel cried. Margaret felt an invisible hand grip her shoulder. The whisper came again, louder, angrier. "You opened the door. You set me free." The mirror cracked violently, splitting Father Black's reflection into shards. But his laughter echoed through the chamber, filling the darkness. And when Margaret looked down, her own shadow was no longer hers. It was his. Margaret's breathing came in ragged gasps as the basement shuddered around her. The cracked mirror gleamed faintly, its fragments reflecting a dozen images of Father Black, each whispering his curse. The children huddled together as a low humming filled the air. A prayer reversed, repeated endlessly from nowhere. Margaret realized what she had done. By tearing down the wall and entering the hidden chamber, she had completed a ritual that Father Black began decades ago, one that required an innocent family to awaken him. The markings on the floor began to glow crimson, lines of light crawling outward like veins. The chair in the center turned toward her on its own, creaking as if inviting her to sit. The voice thundered through the chamber. "A sacrifice for salvation, a life for a life." She turned to Daniel and Emily, tears streaming down her face. "Run," she whispered. "Don't look back." But as the children climbed the steps, the bricks above them shifted, sealing the exit. Father Black's laughter rolled like thunder. Margaret gripped the knife she'd brought from the kitchen, her hand shaking. "You're not taking them," she said. "You can have me." The candles blew out, plunging everything into black. A gust of icy air surrounded her, lifting her from the ground. The children screamed as Father Black's form merged with hers, light and shadow twisting together. For a moment, the entire house shook, and then silence. When rescuers finally broke into the home days later, they found the hidden chamber empty. The markings were gone, the mirror was gone, but on the wall, scratched deep into the stone, was one final message. She took his place, and in the upstairs hallway mirror, neighbors swore they could still see Margaret, standing behind their reflections, smiling faintly.